The conference room went silent when I said it. I think Lauren should get the promotion. Every head at the table turned toward me. David, our CMO, actually dropped his pen. Lauren's mouth fell open, her perfectly glossed lips forming a small O of shock. But I kept my eyes on the table, fingers laced together, the picture of selfless nobility. Maya, David said slowly, you're our top performer. This promotion to senior director is yours. We've already drawn up the paperwork. I forced a small, sad smile. I know, and I'm grateful, but Lauren has been working toward this for years. She's ready. And honestly, I paused, let my voice crack just slightly. I'm not sure I can handle the Imperium Cosmetics account right now. My mother's health has been declining, and I need to focus on family. It was a perfect lie. My mother was fine, thriving, actually, in her Florida retirement community, but they didn't know that. And more importantly, they didn't know what I knew, that in my first life, I had taken this promotion. I had been so proud, so eager, senior director at 32, the youngest in the company's history. The Imperium account was supposed to be my crown jewel, a $50 million beauty brand wanting to completely rebrand for Gen Z. Instead, it had been my execution. Lauren reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Maya, are you sure this is huge? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Lauren Chen, my best friend since our sophomore year at Northwestern. We'd been roommates, study partners, each other's maids of honor. When we both got hired at Velocity Marketing 5 years ago, we'd celebrated with too much champagne and promises that we'd rise through the ranks together. In my first life, I'd believed those promises. I didn't know that she'd been the one feeding my ideas to the competition. Didn't know she'd been sleeping with David to position herself as my replacement. Didn't know that when the Imperium account crashed and burned, when the client CEO turned out to be impossible to please, when the rebrand bombed spectacularly, when I worked myself into the hospital trying to save it, Lauren had been there, whispering poison in everyone's ears. Maya's lost her edge. Maya's not strategic enough. Maya can't handle the pressure. I'd been fired 6 months after the promotion that was supposed to change my life. And Lauren had stepped seamlessly into my role, minus the toxic Imperium account, which she'd cleverly distanced herself from. I'd spiraled after that. Depression, anxiety, insomnia. My marriage had crumbled. I'd driven my car off a bridge in the rain 6 months later, too tired to live, too broken to care. And then I'd woken up. Not in a hospital, not in heaven or hell, but in my bed in my old apartment with my phone alarm blaring and the date reading March 15th, 2023, exactly 2 months before the promotion decision. Rebirth. Second chance. Whatever you wanted to call it. I'd spent the first week convinced I was insane, but the memories were too vivid, too specific. I knew that the coffee machine in the break room would break on March 22nd. I knew that Jason from accounting would get caught embezzling on April 3rd. I knew that David's wife would leave him on April 17th, making him vulnerable and reckless. And I knew that the Imperium Cosmetics promotion was a poisoned chalice, so I'd spent 2 months planning, researching, watching, and now, in this conference room, I was setting my trap. I'm sure, I said, squeezing Lauren's hand back. You deserve this. You've worked so hard. Lauren's eyes shimmered with tears. Real ones, I thought. She did care about me in her way, she just cared about herself more. If Maya insists, David said, still looking baffled, then, Lauren, congratulations. You're our new senior director. The room erupted in applause. Lauren stood, accepting hugs and handshakes. She pulled me into an embrace, and I felt her whisper against my ear, "Thank you. I'll never forget this." Neither will I thought. They held Lauren's promotion party at Marceau's, the expensive French restaurant downtown. I arrived late, by design, and found Lauren holding court at the center of a crowd, champagne glass glinting under the lights. "There she is," Lauren called out when she spotted me. "Everyone, this woman is the reason I'm here." Maya could have taken this promotion herself, but she thought I was more deserving. That's true friendship. People clapped, I smiled, and accepted congratulations for my supposed selflessness. Inside, I was counting down. 3 weeks until Imperium's CEO, Vivian Voss, arrived for the first meeting. 4 weeks until Lauren realized what she'd gotten herself into. 8 weeks until everything fell apart. "You look happy," said a voice beside me. I turned to find Marcus Webb, our creative director. He was older than most of us, mid-40s, with silver streaks in his dark hair and sharp, observant eyes. In my first life, Marcus had been one of the few people who'd been kind to me after my firing. We'd gotten coffee once, and he'd told me that he'd known something was wrong with the Imperium account from the start. "Just proud of Lauren?" I said carefully. Marcus sipped his wine. "You know, I've worked here for 15 years. I've seen a lot of promotions. This is the first time I've seen someone turn one down. Your mother is fine. She posted pictures from her golf tournament on Facebook yesterday." Marcus's expression didn't change. "I'm not trying to pry, Maya. I'm just curious. You're the best strategist we have. You could handle any account. So, why step aside?" I met his eyes. Marcus was smart. Too smart. But he was also genuinely kind. And in my first life, he'd been blacklisted by Lauren once she took power. Eventually pushed out of the company for not being a team player. "Let's just say," I said slowly, "that sometimes the best move is knowing when not to make one." Marcus studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Interesting. You know, if you ever need an ally, my door's open. I'll remember that." The first Imperium meeting happened on a Tuesday morning in May. I wasn't in the room, senior directors and above only, but I lingered near the conference room afterward, organizing files I didn't need to organize, waiting. The door finally opened, and Lauren emerged looking shell-shocked. Her normally perfect composure was cracked, her smile fixed and brittle. Behind her, David was doing damage control, shaking hands with a tall, severe-looking woman in a white suit. Vivian Voss, CEO of Imperium Cosmetics, 58 years old. Self-made billionaire, and according to industry gossip, the most difficult client in the beauty business. "We'll have revised concepts for you by Friday," David was saying, his voice tight. "See that you do," Vivian said coldly. "Miss Chen, I expect better from a senior director. That presentation was juvenile." Lauren's face flushed. "I apologize. I don't want apologies. I want results." Vivian swept past, her assistant scurrying after her. The moment they were gone, Lauren sagged against the wall. David ran a hand through his hair, looking 10 years older. "Lauren, my office, now." I watched them disappear down the hall, then allowed myself a small smile. It was starting. Over the next month, I watched Lauren unravel. The Imperium account was everything I remembered. A nightmare wrapped in a $50 million bow. Vivian rejected every concept. She wanted Gen Z appeal but hated anything too trendy. She wanted sophistication but nothing that felt old. She wanted bold but tasteful, edgy but classic, revolutionary but timeless. In other words, she wanted the impossible. Lauren worked late every night. She snapped at people in meetings. Her perfect composure cracked more with each passing day. The dark circles under her eyes got deeper. She started making mistakes. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. Meanwhile, I thrived. Without the pressure of the promotion, I took on smaller accounts that I could actually succeed with. I brought in a new athleisure brand. I pitched a brilliant campaign for a sustainable fashion startup that went viral, garnering industry awards. I mentored junior staff and built relationships across departments. People started noticing. "Maya, do you have a minute?" David caught me in the hallway in late June. "I wanted to get your thoughts on the Evergreen campaign." "Of course." We talked strategy for 30 minutes. David looked relieved to have someone who wasn't falling apart, someone who could think clearly. When we finished, he hesitated. "You know, I have to say, I was surprised when you turned down the promotion. But watching you these past months, I wonder if you knew something I didn't." I smiled enigmatically. "Sometimes the timing just isn't right." "Well, your timing now is impeccable. Keep it up." The explosion happened in late July. I was at my desk when I heard the shouting from the conference room. Lauren's voice, high and strained, and then Vivian's, cutting and cruel. "This is unacceptable. I've given you 3 months and millions of dollars, and this is what you present? My 10-year-old nephew could design better. Ms. Voss, please. I want to speak to your superior now." David was called in, then the CEO of our entire company, Richard Hewitt. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. Vivian was threatening to pull the account. She was threatening to sue for breach of contract. She was, in short, burning everything down. And she blamed Lauren. 2 hours later, Lauren emerged from David's office with red-rimmed eyes and a cardboard box of her desk belongings. Fired. The whispers spread through the office like wildfire. Lauren Chen, the Golden Girl, the newly minted senior director, had been terminated, effective immediately. I found her in the lobby, waiting for her Uber, clutching her box. Lauren. She looked up, and for a moment her mask slipped completely. I saw rage there, and shame, and something close to hatred. Come to gloat? She said bitterly. No, I said, and I meant it. I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. I'm sorry it ended this way. Are you? Lauren laughed harshly. You knew, didn't you? You knew that account was poisoned. That's why you gave it to me. I said nothing. Let her believe what she wanted. 5 years, Lauren said. 5 years we were friends. I thought you actually cared about me, but you set me up. Did I asked quietly. Or did you set yourself up the moment you decided that promotion was worth stabbing me in the back? Lauren's eyes widened. What are you— I know about David, I said. I know about the ideas you stole from me and gave to Cascade Agency. I know about all the little comments you made, undermining me while pretending to support me. Did you think I didn't notice? It was a bluff. In this timeline, she hadn't done those things yet. Couldn't have. But I knew her. And sure enough, guilt flashed across her face. Maya, your Uber's here, I said, nodding toward the curb. Lauren opened her mouth, then closed it. She hefted her box and walked out the door, her expensive heels clicking against the marble floor one last time. I never saw her again. The meeting with Richard Hewitt happened the next morning. Maya, please sit. Richard gestured to a chair. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. I'll get straight to the point. We need someone to take over the Imperium account. My heart rate stayed steady. I'd been expecting this. Sir, with all respect, that account is a disaster. Vivian Voss is impossible to please. I'm aware, but she specifically asked for you. I blinked. What? After yesterday's incident, I spoke with Miss Voss extensively. She reviewed the work of everyone on Lauren's team, and she was impressed by some peripheral concepts you'd contributed early on. She said you had vision. Richard leaned forward. She wants you to lead the account, Maya, and she's willing to give us 1 more month to prove ourselves. This was different from my first life. Then Vivian had just pulled the account entirely, and I'd been too broken to care. But now, I'll need complete creative control, I said. Done. And Marcus Webb on my team. He's the best creative director we have. Granted. And, I said, meeting Richard's eyes, I want Lauren's old salary and title. Senior Director. Richard didn't hesitate. You drive this home, Maya, and you'll get everything Lauren had plus a bonus. I smiled. Then let's save this account. The next month was brutal, but in the best way. I assembled a small focus team. Marcus, plus 2 junior designers who were brilliant but overlooked, and a data analyst who understood Gen Z better than anyone. We worked long hours, but they were productive hours, focused hours. No chaos, no panic. And I had something Lauren never had. I'd already lived through this once. I knew what wouldn't work. More importantly, I knew what would. Vivian Voss was impossible to please because she didn't actually know what she wanted. She was a self-made businesswoman who'd built her empire on classical beauty standards, and now the world was changing beneath her feet. She was terrified of becoming irrelevant, so she rejected everything, hoping that eventually someone would solve her existential crisis for her. So I did. I didn't give her Gen Z, I gave her evolution. Imperium isn't chasing trends, I said in our first presentation, Marcus's gorgeous mock-ups glowing on the screen behind me. Imperium is setting them. You've always been about timeless beauty, so let's redefine timeless for a new generation. The campaign was called Legacy. It featured real women of all ages, including some of Imperium's original customers from the 80s and 90s, alongside Gen Z influencers. The message, beauty isn't about erasing your age or chasing youth. It's about owning every chapter of your story. Imperium, the tagline read, "Beauty that outlasts trends." Vivian was silent for a long time after the presentation. Then she said, "Show me more." We spent the next 3 weeks refining every detail. Vivian was still demanding, still exacting, but now she was engaged. She pushed us to be better, not to be different. And slowly, grudgingly, she started to trust me. The final presentation happened on a Friday in late August. Richard, David, half the executive team, and Vivian Voss herself crowded into the conference room. Marcus and I presented for an hour, walking through every aspect of the campaign: the visuals, the messaging, the rollout strategy, the influencer partnerships, the data supporting our approach. When we finished, Vivian stood. My heart hammered. "Miss Liu," she said, using my last name with a formality that somehow felt respectful, "this is exactly what Imperium needed. You've given us a path forward that honors our heritage while embracing the future. Consider the contract renewed for 5 years with an expanded budget." The room erupted. Richard was beaming. David looked relieved and vindicated. Marcus caught my eye and grinned. But all I could think about was the moment 6 months ago when I'd woken up with a second chance. My first life's memories burning in my mind like a warning. I'd taken that warning and turned it into a weapon. My official promotion to senior director came through the next week, along with a salary that was 20% higher than what Lauren had been making. Richard explained that they wanted to acknowledge my exceptional work and ensure I felt valued. I signed the papers without hesitation. They threw another party at Marceau's. This time, I was the one in the center. Accepting congratulations. Marcus raised a toast to Maya, who turned an impossible situation into our biggest success story. "To Maya," the room echoed. I sipped my champagne and let myself feel it. Not just the victory, but the satisfaction of knowing I'd outplayed everyone. Lauren had thought she was clever, positioning herself to steal my success. David had thought he was making a safe choice, giving the promotion to someone he could control. Even Vivian, with all her demands, had thought she could break whoever they put in front of her. But I'd had the one advantage none of them could see coming. I'd already lost this game once, and I'd learned from it. "Speech," someone called. I set down my glass and stood. "Thank you all. This past few months have been enlightening." I've learned that sometimes the best path forward isn't the obvious one. Sometimes you have to step back to see the bigger picture, and sometimes the best revenge is just doing your job better than anyone expected. The room laughed, thinking I was being humble. Only Marcus looked at me with that sharp, knowing gaze, a small smile on his lips. He understood. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. I moved into a corner office with windows overlooking the city. I built a team of talented people who'd been overlooked, giving opportunities to those who deserved them, remembering how it felt to be dismissed. The Imperium campaign launched in October and was a massive success, generating press coverage and industry awards. I heard through the grapevine that Lauren had taken a job at a smaller agency. A demotion, really, though they probably didn't call it that. I felt a brief flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but close. She'd made her choices. So had I. The difference was I'd made mine with perfect information. In November, Richard called me into his office. "Maya, I want to talk about your future here. We're looking at creating a VP of strategy role. I think you're ready." I smiled. I'd be honored to discuss it. As I walked back to my office, I passed the conference room where, in another life, I'd accepted that fatal promotion, where I'd been so proud, so naive, so trusting. I'd been given a gift, a second chance most people only dream about, and I'd used it not just to save myself, but to become the person I should have been all along. Stronger, smarter, unbreakable. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Drinks later? I'm buying. You can tell me your secret." I laughed and typed back, "No secret. Just good strategy." But we both knew that wasn't quite true. Sometimes the best strategy is knowing what your enemies will do before they do it. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting them destroy themselves while you step aside and let it happen. Lauren had wanted my promotion, so I'd given it to her, along with everything that came with it. And then I'd taken it all back. Better than it ever was. The universe had given me a second chance, but I'd earned this victory all on my own. December came with its annual performance reviews and bonuses. I sat in Richard's office, my portfolio of successes spread between us. The Imperium campaign. 3 new major clients I'd brought in personally, a 40% increase in my team's productivity, industry recognition. Maya, you've had an extraordinary year, Richard said. Not just the work itself, but the way you've grown as a leader. When you turned down that promotion back in May, I thought you were making a mistake. Now I see it was the smartest career move you could have made. I tilted my head. How so? You weren't ready then, not because of skill, but because the timing was wrong. The Imperium account in Lauren's hands was a disaster waiting to happen, but by the time it came to you, you'd built up credibility, relationships, and trust. You stepped into a crisis and turned it into a triumph. That's the kind of leader we need. He slid a folder across the desk. This is your new contract. VP of Strategy, effective January 1st. Plus equity options and a corner office on the executive floor. I opened the folder. The salary number made my breath catch. Nearly triple what I'd been making a year ago. More than Lauren had ever come close to earning. There's one more thing, Richard said. I'm making you David's equal in terms of authority. You'll oversee all major client strategy, report directly to me. David will handle the creative execution side. It's a partnership structure, but Maya, he leaned forward, between you and me, you're being groomed for CMO when David eventually moves on, which, based on his recent performance, might be sooner than later. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was soaring. In my first life, I'd crashed and burned. In this one, I was ascending past everyone who'd ever doubted me. I won't let you down, I said. I know you won't. You've already proven that. The holiday party was lavish that year. Open bar, live band, the works. I wore a red dress that cost more than my first car and felt like power incarnate as I moved through the crowd. David cornered me near the bar, drunk and bitter. Congratulations on VP, he said, the words slightly slurred. Must be nice, getting everything you want. I worked for it, I said simply. Did you? Or did you just let Lauren take the fall so you could swoop in and play hero? He took a long drink. I know what you did, Maya. You set her up. I accepted a demotion so she could have a promotion she wanted, I said calmly. What she did with that opportunity was entirely up to her. If she failed, that's on her, not me. Bullshit. You knew that account was poisoned. Did I? I seem to remember that same account becoming our company's biggest success story under my leadership. So, maybe the account wasn't the problem. I met his bloodshot eyes. Maybe the leader was. David's face reddened. You think you're so smart. I don't think, David. I know. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I also know that you were sleeping with Lauren while she was sabotaging me. I know you've been inflating your performance metrics, and I know that Richard is watching you very carefully now, wondering if you're still the right person for CMO. His face went pale. You can't. I don't have to do anything. You're doing it to yourself. I smiled. Merry Christmas, David? I walked away, leaving him sputtering at the bar. Marcus found me on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. That looked intense. David's realizing his kingdom is crumbling? Good. He's been coasting on other people's work for years. Marcus handed me a champagne flute. You know, I figured out your secret. Oh. You're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. You see the whole board, not just the next move. He clinked his glass against mine. It's impressive, and slightly terrifying. I laughed. Should I be worried that you've figured me out? Not at all. I'm planning to ride your coattails all the way to the top. He grinned. Besides, someone needs to keep you honest. Make sure you don't turn into the villain of your own story. Is that what you think I am? A villain? Marcus considered. No, I think you're someone who got tired of being the victim. There's a difference. He was more right than he knew. January brought my new role and new challenges. The executive floor was a different world. Bigger stakes, more politics, sharper knives. But I'd already died once in my career. Nothing up here scared me anymore. I restructured my department, promoted the people who'd helped me succeed, and quietly began documenting David's failures. Not to sabotage him. I didn't need to. He was doing that himself, still reeling from Lauren's failure and his own poor decisions. By March, Richard called him into his office for a performance discussion. By April, David announced he was pursuing other opportunities. By May, I was sitting in the CMO's office barely a year after I'd turned down the promotion that would have destroyed me. "How does it feel?" Marcus asked, standing in my doorway on my first day as Chief Marketing Officer. "Surreal," I admitted. A year ago, I was watching Lauren get everything I wanted. Now you have everything she wanted, plus everything she could never have achieved." Marcus smiled. "Karma's a bitch, and apparently, so are you." I laughed. "I prefer strategically patient." "Whatever helps you sleep at night, boss." But the truth was, I did sleep well. Better than I ever had in my first life. Because this time, I hadn't just survived. I'd won on my own terms. I ran into Lauren exactly once after that, at an industry conference in June. She'd aged poorly in just a year. Stress lines around her eyes, cheaper clothes, a brittleness to her smile. She was working for a mid-tier agency now, far below her former status. "Maya," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you. How are you?" "Good. Fine. Building something new?" It sounded hollow. "I've been thinking about us, about what happened. Have you?" I wanted to say. She paused, struggling. "I'm sorry for everything. I let ambition make me cruel. I should have been a better friend." In my first life, I might have cried. I might have forgiven her, desperate for connection, but I'd already lived through the consequences of her betrayal. I'd already died because of it. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I hope things work out for you, Lauren. I really do." It was the truth. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't feel anything at all. She nodded, understanding the dismissal. "Take care, Maya." "You too." I watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd. A ghost of my former life, powerless to haunt me now. 2 years after my rebirth, I stood on stage at the National Marketing Awards, accepting the trophy for Campaign of the Year. The Imperium Legacy campaign had changed beauty industry standards, spawning imitators and think pieces, and a cultural conversation about age and authenticity. "This award belongs to my team," I said into the microphone, the spotlight warm on my face, "to everyone who believed in the vision and worked tirelessly to bring it to life. And to anyone who's ever been told they weren't ready, weren't good enough, weren't deserving, this is proof that patience and strategy will always beat blind ambition." The audience applauded. Vivian Voss, sitting in the front row, smiled up at me with genuine warmth. Marcus Wolf whistled from the side. Richard nodded with patriarchal pride. But the person I wished could see this wasn't in the room. She was the version of me from my first life. Broken, fired, suicidal. The woman who'd driven her car off a bridge because she couldn't see a way forward. "I did this for you," I thought. "I survived for you. I won for you." As after the ceremony, I stood outside the venue, trophy in hand, looking at the city lights. My phone buzzed with congratulations texts. My calendar was booked solid with opportunities. My future was bright and boundless. I'd been given a miracle, a chance to undo my biggest mistakes. But standing here now, I understood something crucial. The rebirth hadn't saved me. The knowledge of the future had just been a tool. What had saved me was the willingness to use it ruthlessly. In my first life, I'd been trusting, generous, naive. I'd believed that hard work and friendship were enough. I thought Lauren cared about me as much as I cared about her. I thought the system was fair. I'd learned in the cruelest way possible that none of that was true. So in this life, I'd played a different game. I'd been strategic where I'd been impulsive, patient where I'd been eager. I'd set traps instead of walking into them. I'd let my enemies destroy themselves instead of trying to save them. And I'd won everything. "Quite a night," a familiar voice said. I turned to find an older woman approaching, elegant, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. It took me a moment to place her, and then I remembered. Dr. Chen, a business psychology professor from Northwestern. She'd taught my senior year strategy course, the one where I'd met Lauren. "Dr. Chen, I didn't know you were here. I was invited to present an award earlier." She smiled. "I've been following your career with interest, Maya." You were always one of my brightest students, but something's changed in you. You're sharper now, more focused. Experience, I said carefully. Perhaps. She studied me with those penetrating eyes. Or perhaps you learned a lesson the hard way and decided never to repeat it. Either way, you've become formidable. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. You've mastered the art of strategic patience, knowing when to advance and when to retreat. Most people never learn that lesson. They charge forward at every opportunity and wonder why they keep hitting walls. She paused. Your friend Lauren was like that. Brilliant, ambitious, but impulsive. She couldn't see the bigger picture. You remember Lauren? Of course. You two were inseparable. I always wondered which of you would go further. Dr. Chen smiled. Now I know. You did. Because you learned that success isn't about taking every opportunity. It's about taking the right ones. I thought about the promotion I'd turned down, the demotion I'd accepted, the careful way I'd orchestrated Lauren's downfall without ever appearing to lift a finger against her. What if I told you, I said slowly, that I knew exactly what would happen when I gave up that promotion? That I knew the account was poisoned and that whoever took it would fail? Dr. Chen's smile widened. Then I'd say you're even smarter than I thought. Most people need to make mistakes to learn from them. But the truly exceptional can learn from mistakes they haven't made yet, either by observation or, she paused meaningfully, other means. My heart skipped. Other means? Hypothetically speaking, of course. If someone had, say, perfect information about the future, knew exactly which paths would lead to success and which to failure, that person would have an extraordinary advantage. They could avoid every pitfall, seize every opportunity, and appear to be simply lucky or brilliant, when really they were just informed. She was too perceptive, dangerously so. That would be quite an advantage, I said neutrally. It would. Though I imagine such a person would still need courage to use that information effectively. After all, knowing what will happen and having the strength to act on it are two different things. Doctor? Chen's eyes sparkled. You've done well, Maya. Whatever your methods, you've earned this success. Just remember, the higher you climb, the more people will want to tear you down. Stay vigilant. I will. Good. She squeezed my shoulder. Congratulations on the award. I suspect there will be many more in your future. She walked away, leaving me unsettled. Did she know? Could she possibly understand what had really happened? But as I stood there, trophy in hand and city lights glittering before me, I realized it didn't matter. Whether anyone knew my secret or not, the results spoke for themselves. I'd turned down a promotion and watched my rival destroy herself. I'd taken on an impossible account and turned it into a triumph. I'd risen from nothing to CMO in 2 years, and I'd done it all by being smarter, more patient, and more ruthless than anyone expected. Lauren had wanted my job, so I'd given her the chance and the rope to hang herself. The universe had given me a second life, but I'd earned this victory all on my own. 5 years after my rebirth, I stood in Richard's office for the last time as his subordinate. The board has made their decision, he said, smiling. Maya, it's my pleasure to offer you the position of Chief Executive Officer of Velocity Marketing. CEO, the top of the mountain. At 37 years old, I would be leading one of the most prestigious marketing firms in the country. In my first life, I'd been dead at 33. I accept, I said. Richard stood and shook my hand. You've earned this 10 times over. The Imperium campaign changed our industry. The clients you've brought in have doubled our revenue. The culture you've built has made us one of the most sought-after employers in the field. He paused. More than that, you've shown extraordinary judgment. You know when to be aggressive and when to be patient. That's rare. If only he knew just how much judgment I'd exercised. How I'd spent 5 years carefully orchestrating every move, using the knowledge of my previous life to avoid every pitfall and seize every opportunity. How I'd let my enemies destroy themselves while I built an empire on the ashes of their failures. Thank you, Richard. I won't let you down. I know you won't. My first act as CEO was to restructure the senior leadership team. Marcus became Chief Creative Officer, a position I created specifically for him. I brought in new talent from across the industry, people who'd been overlooked or underestimated. People like I'd once been. My second act was to personally call Vivian Voss. Ms. Voss, this is Maya Liu. I wanted to let you know I've been named CEO of Velocity. Congratulations, Vivian said warmly, though I'm not surprised. You're a force of nature, Maya. I wanted to thank you. 5 years ago, you gave me a chance when you could have pulled the Imperium account entirely. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You earned that trust, and you've continued to earn it every day since. Vivian paused. Between you and me, I knew Lauren was wrong for that project from the start. She was too hungry, too desperate to prove herself. But you were hungry too, but you were smart enough to wait for the right moment. That's what separates the good from the great. After we hung up, I sat in my new office, the CEO's office, massive and light-filled with panoramic views, and thought about that word, hungry. I'd been starving in my first life, starving for recognition, for success, for validation. That hunger had made me vulnerable. It had made me trust the wrong people and miss the warning signs until it was too late. But my second life had taught me a different kind of hunger. Not the desperate, consuming kind, but the patient, strategic kind. The hunger of a predator who knows how to wait, how to watch, how to strike at exactly the right moment. Lauren had been hungry too, but her hunger had been blind and selfish. Mine had been honed by the knowledge of what happens when you fail. The 10th anniversary of my rebirth came and went without fanfare. March 15th, the day I'd woken up in my old apartment, my first life's memories burning in my skull like a brand. I spent that morning at my desk, reviewing a proposal for international expansion. Velocity was thriving under my leadership, our revenue had tripled, our culture awards were stacking up, and our client roster was the envy of the industry. Everything I'd lost in my first life, I'd reclaimed tenfold in my second. My phone buzzed. An email notification from LinkedIn. Lauren Chen has endorsed you for strategic planning. I stared at it for a long moment, then clicked through to her profile. She'd changed jobs again. Her third in 5 years. She was a senior manager now at a boutique agency. Not terrible, but far from the trajectory she'd once imagined for herself. I wondered if she ever thought about me, about the promotion she'd taken, and how spectacularly it had destroyed her. About how her best friend had stepped aside with such apparent grace and then risen higher than Lauren ever could have imagined. Did she ever wonder if it had been intentional? Did she ever suspect? Probably not. Lauren had always seen what she wanted to see. She'd wanted to believe I was noble and self-sacrificing, so that's what she'd seen. Even now, endorsing me on LinkedIn, she probably thought she was being magnanimous, the fallen star graciously acknowledging the one who'd risen. She didn't understand that she'd been playing a game she'd already lost before it even started. I clicked Accept Endorsement and closed the window. Some ghosts deserve to stay buried. At 42, I sold Velocity Marketing to a global conglomerate for a sum that made headlines. I'd spent 15 years building it into a powerhouse, the last 7 as CEO. The sale made me independently wealthy, never have to work. Again, wealthy. But I wasn't done yet. I used part of the money to start a venture capital firm, investing in women-led businesses and companies that had been overlooked by traditional investors. People like I'd once been. People who just needed a chance. I called it Phoenix Ventures. Marcus became my partner. You realize the irony here, right? He said as we signed the paperwork. Phoenix, rising from the ashes. That's the point, I said. He gave me that knowing look he'd perfected over the years. One of these days, you're going to tell me your real story. How you went from turning down a promotion to running an empire in less than a decade. Maybe, when we're old and drinking expensive whiskey. I'm holding you to that. But we both knew I'd never tell. Some secrets were meant to stay buried with the life that birthed them. I was 45 when I saw Lauren for the last time. I was keynoting at a marketing conference, Strategic Patience, the long game in business success. The auditorium was packed, hundreds of people eager to hear the billionaire CEO of Phoenix Ventures share her wisdom. I spoke about timing, about knowing when to advance and when to retreat, about how the best opportunities sometimes look like setbacks, about how true success requires playing the long game. I never mentioned Lauren by name. But as I told the story of turning down a promotion that would have destroyed me, I saw her in the audience. 5th row, left side. Older now, well into her 40s, with gray streaking her hair. Our eyes met. And I saw, in that moment, that she finally understood. She knew. Maybe not about the rebirth. That was impossible to know, but she knew that I'd played her, that I'd deliberately given her the rope to hang herself with, that her failure had been orchestrated, at least in part, by the best friend she'd betrayed. I held her gaze as I said, sometimes the most powerful move you can make is stepping aside and letting your competition destroy themselves. The audience laughed, thinking it was a metaphor. Lauren's face went white. After the speech, she didn't come backstage. She didn't send an email or a message. She simply disappeared into the crowd, a ghost from my past that had finally been exorcised. I never saw or heard from her again. Now, at 55, I sit in my home office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. Phoenix Ventures has invested in over 200 companies, with a success rate that's become legendary. I've been on magazine covers, given TED Talks, mentored hundreds of young professionals. I've also never told anyone about my rebirth. Not Marcus, not my partners, not even the therapist I saw briefly in my 40s when I started having nightmares about the bridge, about the rain, about the moment in my first life when I decided I couldn't go on. But I did tell her something true. I feel like I've lived 2 lives, I'd said. One where I failed at everything, and one where I succeeded at everything. And sometimes I'm not sure which one is real. Maybe they're both real, she'd suggested. Maybe you needed to imagine that failure to push yourself towards success. I'd let her believe that. It was easier than the truth. The truth was that I had lived 2 lives. One had ended in disaster, broken and discarded at 33. The other had been a masterpiece of strategic patience and calculated revenge. And the second life had been possible only because I'd learned from the first. Sometimes I wonder about the metaphysics of it all. Did I actually travel back in time? Was it a gift from some cosmic force? Or had I simply dreamed it all? A dying hallucination in those final moments before my car hit the water? It doesn't matter. The results are the same. I started with nothing but knowledge and pain, and I built an empire. I turned down a promotion that would have destroyed me, gave it to the person who'd betrayed me, and watched as karma, or perhaps just inevitable consequence, devoured her whole. Then, I stepped into the vacancy she'd created and rose higher than she ever could have imagined. Lauren wanted my job. So I gave it to her, along with everything that came with it. The pressure, the impossible client, the inevitable failure. And then I took it all back, better than it ever was. Her old salary, her old title, and eventually, the entire company. She got everything she wanted, and it destroyed her. I got my revenge. And it made me. My phone buzzes. A notification from LinkedIn. Lauren Chen has viewed your profile. I smile and set the phone down without looking at her profile in return. After all these years, she's still watching me. Still wondering how I did it. Still bitter about what she lost. Let her wonder, let her watch. Let her spend the rest of her life knowing that the best friend she betrayed became everything she dreamed of being, while she became a cautionary tale. That's the real revenge I've learned. Not destruction, but irrelevance. I didn't ruin Lauren's life. I simply gave her the opportunity to ruin it herself. And then I built my empire on the lessons her failure taught me. She got fired. I got her old salary. But more than that, I got her future, her dreams, her destiny. I got everything. And I earned every bit of it, one strategic decision at a time. The universe gave me a second chance, but I made it count in ways that first life Maya could never have imagined. I turned down a promotion and inherited an empire. I accepted a demotion and became CEO. I let my enemy think she'd won, and then I won everything. That's the power of strategic patience, of knowing when to retreat so you can advance, of understanding that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's success so complete that your enemy becomes a footnote in your story. Lauren Chen taught me many things, though she never meant to. She taught me that friendship can be a weapon, that betrayal comes from those closest to you, that ambition without strategy is just desperation, and most importantly, She taught me that sometimes the best move is the one nobody expects. Like turning down a promotion you know is poisoned, like accepting a demotion that's actually an investment, like watching your rival destroy herself while you position yourself to catch her crown when it falls. I've had a good second life. No, better than good. Extraordinary. And I earned it all by being smarter, more patient, and more ruthless than anyone expected. After Rebirth, I accepted the job demotion for her promotion. She got fired, and I got her old salary, plus her old office, her old title, her old dreams, and a future so bright it would have blinded the woman I used to be. The woman who died on that rainy bridge, the woman who came back and learned to play the game properly, the woman who turned revenge into an art form and patience into a weapon. That woman is me, and she's unstoppable. I look out at the Pacific, at the sun setting over the water, turning everything gold. In my first life, I drowned in darkness. In my second, I became the light. And Lauren, she's still in my shadow, looking up, wondering how I did it. Let her wonder. I've got an empire to run.